Hey everybody, welcome to our virtual webinar, which is part of the Agentic AI Security Summit. Really excited for everyone to be here. My hope is that by the end of this, everyone's going to walk away with an understanding of why AI security really is identity security and what Okta is doing to help every single one of you secure AI agents in your organization. So let's get going. I am Harish Peri. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product Marketing with Okta. And I'm really happy to run through this content with you. Let's get into it. Now, we're going to cover some stuff that may be future facing. Please make any purchase decisions based on what's available in the product today. But we're here to really talk about stuff that's exciting, that's future facing, that's coming soon. So let's get into it. This should be no surprise to anybody on this webinar. Every single one of you can and has the power to be a developer right here, right now. There's tons of vibe coding applications that are popping up. There's tons of ways in which you can, if you think of something, you can turn it into an app. And that is really the power of AI as it stands today, which is great from a productivity perspective. If you dream it, you can build it. I've been in this game a long time. We talk about democratizing app creation. That was really marketing until recently. AI is making that possible. Every single user can actually be a developer, which is phenomenal from helping you and your companies move forward. You can if you can dream it, you can build it. And there's also another big shift that's happening, which is, we when we think of AI, a lot of us are still thinking about large language models, and we're thinking about, ChatGPT and Claude and all those models where you ask it something and it gives you a response using information that's been pumped into its model, and and using more like predictive reasoning. That's almost the AI of yesterday. And the speed at which this industry is moving, that almost doesn't matter. What we are seeing with pretty much every one of our customers is AI is moving into the agentic world where they're starting to act on a user's behalf. And so there's two stages to that evolution. The first is where you have agents, which you can think of them as a super admin that you're dropping inside your organization, and you're giving it access to tons of sensitive systems, and you're letting it use its reasoning to invoke those tools based on a prompt or based on a long-running action that it needs to execute. Again, it's very goal-oriented and it will keep executing until the job is done. We're also seeing the next wave where you have agents autonomously interacting with each other. So you have, for example, an agent for travel that can access an agent for expenses and for hotel bookings and for flight bookings. And you have this travel concierge that's connecting across all of them, which in turn have lots of connections out to external systems. So we've moved significantly further past simple chatbots into a world of agentic interaction on users' behalf. And very soon we're going to be in a world where you have agents interacting with each other to execute tasks to help move the business forward. So again, users are becoming developers. The nature of AI is fundamentally changing where it's becoming autonomous and it's getting deep access into sensitive data. So the productivity side of that is phenomenal. It's going to help every single company, whether you're a 70-year-old legacy, 100-year-old legacy company, or you're a 3-month-old startup. It's going to help every company innovate and move tremendously fast. The risk, though, is that the attack surface is being fundamentally rewritten. We're seeing, a dozen new attack types pop up every day, from things like poisoning the model to attacks like prompt injection, where a motivated threat actor can actually get a chatbot or an agent to execute a potentially malicious action or spit out PII or sensitive data or access tokens just by spoofing the agent. Recently there was a very large red team exercise that was conducted by the UK AI Security Institute, which is part of the UK government, And in about 1.8 million different attack scenarios, in close to 70, 80,000 of those scenarios, they were able to get the agent to spit out data or take an action that it was not authorized to do. So again, agents are autonomous. They want to please the user that they're acting on behalf of. They want to execute their goal. And so it's kind of unpredictable what action they're going to take. And so the attack surface, everything that your organization may have spent the last 10 years locking down, is now wide open again for someone that is malicious and that has bad intent. This is happening right around us as we speak. And there's a flip side of this. At the same time, because there's such a huge potential with agents, the adoption of agents is picking up. I mean, I think this number is actually old even by the time this slide is being shared with you. There's probably higher than close to 60, 70% that are adopting agents or building their own agents or MCP servers as we speak. But then you have all kinds of unintended behavior, credential exposure, lack of governance that's in place. This disconnect between the need to adopt and move fast, but the glaring security risks is here and now, and it's on all of us to help fix it. So let me give you an example. When you think of how an agent is working, the simplest way is someone gives it a prompt, the agent kind of decides based on the intent of the prompt, which tools and which APIs and whether it's an MCP server that it needs to access that then connects to underlying data sources or resources or sensitive systems. How does it farm it out, and then how does it connect it all back together to collate to combine a response or take an action on behalf of the user? That's a very simplified way of describing it. But when you think of the identity security components of that, you really have to think about what is the resource that's being accessed? What API am I calling? Do I have the right authorization to call it? If I'm accessing sensitive data and then packaging that up back for the response, am I allowed to do that? How am I accessing those resources? Are there long-lived tokens that are maybe overprivileged and overpermissioned? Did I have the authority to actually use that? And then ultimately, what is the intent behind the action that I'm taking? Do I know if it's malicious, or do I know if it's on behalf of a real user versus a threat actor? These are all the identity security questions that need to be answered when a simple agentic transaction is being executed. So there's a lot of security concerns that have to go into this. And these are some examples of the identity security risks that you really need to think about. One of them is this whole concept of unauthorized data access. Just because the agent thinks based on its reasoning that a certain data source needs to be accessed, is it allowed to do that? Is that something that the user is acting on behalf of, or the context that it's acting in? Is it really allowed to access it? That's a decision that the agent should never have to make. That should be controlled independently. What are the permissions that that agent has? Has there a token exchange happened that gives that agent privileged access to a sensitive resource? Is that token long lived? Should it have been rotated? Has that happened yet? Again, this is not a decision an agent needs to make. It should be controlled centrally by security teams. Same thing from a compliance and audit perspective. Are all these actions being audited? Is this actually acting in compliance if an agent is accessing data across global lines? Is that all allowed from a compliance perspective? Is the authorization fine-grained enough to ensure that in one transaction, an agent doesn't break its authorization policies? And then finally, there's a whole data leakage component. Do I know as an agent if I'm inadvertently leaking something like a token that'll help a threat actor break in, escalate privilege, and then move laterally? Or am I inadvertently leaking PII information or sensitive data to someone that shouldn't be seeing it? These are all genuine identity security concerns that are being introduced in this agentic and MCP world that we're in right now. And going back to my original point, companies are in such a rush to implement agentic workflows because, again, the productivity gains are huge, but the security concerns are actually being left behind. And what's funny is if you've been in identity security for any period of time, you'll recognize these issues. These are almost old issues that we as an industry have spent the last 10 years fixing, but now these are becoming new issues again because the agentic interaction patterns are breaking all the security controls that have been put in place. So this issue is very real and needs to be controlled. So the question is, what are we doing about it, right? The premise of this webinar was Okta secures agentic AI. Well, how are we doing it? So our point of view is that there needs to be a single approach, a unified approach to securing the entire agentic lifecycle. What that means is if you are building agents or MCP servers in-house, you need to build them to be secure by design. And there's four key principles that go into that. And the second thing is for your own homegrown agents and for the ones that you may bring in from third-party vendors, because every vendor right now that's a SaaS company is pushing agents out there to be more relevant with their customers. You need to have a single control plane to manage and govern the visibility and the access of those agents. So again, you got to build them right and you got to manage them right. That's what it means to secure the entire agentic lifecycle. So let's talk about how we're helping to build it. So this is where we have capabilities called Auth0 for AI agents. And what this really does is it allows four key security controls to be introduced into agents right from the minute you decide to build them. The first is to ensure that you're authenticating it on behalf of a user. The second thing is the vaulting of tokens such that there's no hard coding of direct access tokens in the agent, no inadvertent plain text leakage of the tokens into the logs, but you have a vault that has the right rotation policies and the right check and checkout policies to ensure that the agent only accesses that token for the duration that it needs it, and then they get rotated after that. The third key design principle is that of async authorization, which means when needed, you have a human in the loop to actually ensure that you're not taking inadvertently a sensitive action. And then the last piece is to actually ensure fine-grained authorization for RAG. So when you have retrieval augmented generation actions, you're actually enforcing the right level of fine-grained authorization across them. So again, four key principles that go into building agents to be secure by design. Now, if you recall what I said, that's part one of the equation. You got to build them right, and to build them right, you need those four key things. But if you take it a step further, you also need to ensure that agents inside your enterprise are actually being managed correctly. And there's a couple of key components to that. The first is you need the ability to detect and discover agents. Some of these you build, some of these are being provided by vendors, and you may have teams that are rolling these out without letting the IT and security teams know. Well, this is where you need the ability to have complete visibility into all the agents, and this is where Okta's capabilities like identity security posture management and universal directory, which for a long time has handled human identities, is now supports non-human, specifically agentic identities. The second thing is you need the ability to provision and register these agents so that you can manage the lifecycle of them. You also need to be able to protect, authorize and protect them, and finally, govern and monitor them on an ongoing basis. So this means introducing the right level of privileged access controls, introducing the right access certifications, and then over time, introducing the ability to detect risk signals and potentially terminate agentic access in case of elevated risk. So again, you need a single platform where you can manage, gain visibility, and then govern and control all these agents. So build them right, and then manage them right in the Okta platform. And when you do those two things together, that's when your organization is really geared to handle the comprehensive identity security risks that are posed by agents. But there's one more piece to this, which is as you're deciding to build your agents, you also need to make sure that they're built from a standards first perspective. Because if you think about what it means to deploy identity security in your organization, you really need to think about this notion of an identity security fabric, where you have visibility into all identity types, all identity use cases from basic access to privileged access to detection and response across all resource types. So every app, every API, and every agent. And then you need to orchestrate real-time actions in response to risk events that may happen on any part of that fabric. Because once you have this identity security fabric, then if your agents are built the right way, meaning they're built standards first, they can actually be popped right into the identity security fabric. We call it being fabric ready. And that's the third piece of the equation. So you got to build them right with the standards first approach. You need to manage them right within your enterprise, and you need to make sure that all agents can fit into your identity security fabric. So that way you have no gaps, you have no holes in your identity security posture. You can see all the agents, you can control them, you can govern and manage their lifecycle on an ongoing basis. So when we talk about Okta Secure as Agentic AI, that's what we really mean. We build it right, we manage it right, and everything is done standards first so that everything fits into your identity security fabric. And This might sound like a lot, but there's really, with as far as goes with anything from an identity security perspective, or really cybersecurity perspective, there's a place to start. So you want to make sure you're moving up this maturity curve when it comes to AI agents. And the first piece is really understanding the policies and the coverage and the data access. And the second thing is understanding the technology that you need to put in place to discover and detect and what is an acceptable level of risk for you. The third is ensuring that you're provisioning and registering them correctly. And then the last piece is actually enforcing the right governance and monitoring and lifecycle management across the agent. So if you do these four things in kind of a sequential process, you'll get to a place where you've moved up the maturity curve from an agentic security. So we have a whole host of resources in terms of what's next. If you're looking to build agents, you can get started with Auth0 for AI agents to build your agents securely. If you're looking to introduce the right standards into your agents, you can get early access to our cross-app access protocol that's going to help you drop those agents right into your fabric. And then we also have some exciting events lined up specifically around an industry-wide call to action to build and secure agents the right way. That's coming very soon, so stay tuned for that as well. But again, thank you for attending, and let's all make sure we build our agents securely and do the right thing for our enterprises. Thank you very much.